Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing? And where are you joining me from? From South Africa, from Pakistan, from Saudi Arabia, Hyderabad, Pakistan. Somebody asked me how am I doing. Jazakumullah khair. I'm doing good, alhamdulillah. And Jazakallah khair. Okay, from Khubar, from Saudi Arabia, mashallah. We have got people joining from different countries and from different cultures. Today is all about diversity. We're going to talk about the in-laws, all the lessons I've learned from 3 different cultures. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilman ya rabbil alameen. Oh Allah, teach us what would benefit us and help us benefit from what we learn and increase us in knowledge.
It is a pleasure to have you all in Qawari. I am Umar, and if you're new to this channel, please remember to subscribe. It is important to note that this is my personal perspective on the 3 cultures that I've experienced, and if you've experienced something different, I would love to hear that too in the comments below. I will put all the links mentioned in the video in the description below, inshaAllah.
Now, those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Saudi and I stayed there. Then I married into a combined family system and I've lived there for some time. And now I am living in the UK. So I've experienced different cultures and different family systems. Now I'm living in a separate family system. So I've experienced so many different elements, different cultures, and lots of different family dynamics. And I am so happy to be sharing with you today. And the aim is to learn from the positives of each culture, even though we might be discussing some negatives of some cultures, but we're not here to put anybody down or any culture down. We are here to learn from the positives and change whatever we can that's not working for us, inshallah. Now, it is a very important thing to realize that even though there are some cultural norms, but every family is unique and every person is different. So it's important that we treat everybody the way they are, the way that fits with their personality and with their unique family dynamics. These days, we live in a global village because of the internet. We are exposed to different cultures, and the new generation is adapting and they're learning that this is not the only way to live your life. So they are picking and choosing what are more suitable dynamics that would work for them. And this is why we are here, inshallah, to discuss different cultural dynamics. And also, it's important to know that the nature of the in-law relationship is difficult in itself. It is not that mother-in-law is evil or the daughter-in-law is evil. They start off with very good intentions. However, the shaitan works extra diligently with these relationships because nothing pleases him more than causing a split between spouses. So that's why, subhanAllah, because of the shaitan's action, there is an extra element of difficulty in this relationship itself. So you put perfectly good people in the role of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and the conflicts would arise, subhanAllah. So it's important to realize that it's not that mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law is horrible person. They don't want to have good relationship. It's just that the nature of relationship is very sensitive and smallest things can cause a conflict. Now, this is the overview of the session. Today, inshallah, we are going to have 3 cultures overview, first of all. And then we are going to talk about combined and separate family systems, their positives and negatives. And then I'm going to give you 20 gems, 20 things that I've learned from my experiences to have a healthy relationship with in-laws. And then we're going to learn some du'as, inshallah. All right, let's get right into it. So first of all, in Saudi culture, I'm going to talk about Saudi culture where I grew up. And in Saudi culture, they have strong extended family traditions. strong extended family ties. They still have some tribal that was present when Islam first came. They still have this element of tribes that's dear to them, to the point that sometimes, even though they realize that taqwa is the only thing that discriminates a person. Otherwise, everybody is in the same rank in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you would see that sometimes like Qahtani would only want to marry into Qahtani and things like that. So they would want to marry into the similar tribe. And the reason for that is they say that is because they are going to be matching with them in traditions and in the way they run things in the family. In our religion, we also have something called kuf. Kuf means that the families have to be on a similar status. This is one of the things that the fuqaha say that it's good to have in a marriage. A very wealthy person might, or coming from elite family, might not be suitable for somebody coming from the lower family status, because their habits might be so different that they might not find this harmony and this love and connection. So this is why we see that sometimes similar tribes would marry only among themselves or on the tribes that they find in the similar status. I had conversations with my Saudi friends where I was like, okay, what do you think of a non-Saudi marrying into a Saudi family? So she essentially discouraged that, and she said what could happen is that because you got no Saudi family backing you up, so it could mean that you are a weak person there. I mean, you would be welcomed very happily in the family. However, you might not find your status same as them, right? So they have this element in them. However, they've got so many nice traditions, nice family unity. Extended family is very important to them. And the daughters-in-law or the wives call their mothers-in-law amma or khala, which is auntie, mother's sister, or amma is father's sister. So they would call her amma or khala. To respect her, they would not call her mother or ummi. Let me just ask you this question. I'm going to send a poll, and I would like all of you to participate in that. Let me know if you see it in the screen in front of you. Can you tell me, is it a positive or a negative to address your mother-in-law as a khala or auntie instead of mother? Okay, I will give you a few seconds. I want to see all of you responding. I cannot see your names, so you don't have to worry about that. I want to see all of you responding to this. Okay, most of you have said that it is a positive. However, some of you have said that it's a negative. Now, the reason people in Indo-Pak culture would call their brothers-in-law as mothers is because they want them to treat them exactly the same as mother. However, me personally, I think them calling their mothers-in-law as Amma Khala and not mother is a positive thing. It's because to not tie unrealistic expectations with this relationship. The relationship between a mother and a daughter is very different and unique, and it cannot be replicated. And the mother-in-law is a mother-in-law, and there's nothing wrong with that. There are tons of beautiful mothers-in-law and very nice individuals. When we are calling her Khala or Amma, we are not reducing her value in any way, shape, or form. That it introduces the element of some reality in it, some realistic expectations that the relationship a daughter has with her mother it cannot be parallel to any other relationship. Now, when you start addressing your mother-in-law as ummi or my mother, and the mothers-in-law are saying your daughter is going to be just like my own daughter, even though they mean well, but that's not the reality. And it brings some unrealistic expectations in the mix that should not be there. So that's why it's good to have realistic expectations. So I like that they call Amma or Khala, and the next thing is their hospitality and generosity and respect. So anybody marrying into Saudi culture would need to know that, would need to be hospitable themselves, would need to be generous and respectful, respect of elders, respectful in terms of how you're interacting with anybody. Generally, being respectful is a very good trait to have while treating anybody, any of your relationships, your husband, your parents, your siblings, or your children, your friends. The respect is a very crucial element to have in your personality. So the hospitality in Saudi culture, if you go into the homes of Saudi ladies, you are going to feel like a princess because of how well they take care of you. They're so hospitable. They're going to bring you qahwa and dates. So it's a Saudi coffee, and they're going to bring that. They're going to bring qahwa, and they're going to bring dates, and they're going to bring other things as well. And they are going to keep asking you to take seconds. So if all of your family is sitting sofas, for example, one of the hosts would get up and keep filling your cups, keep filling your cups, keep filling your plate. So you are going to feel like you're so well attended to. You're going to feel like a royalty being in their house. And the generosity, I've personally seen things where if you praise anything they're wearing, a jewelry, a necklace, or whatever, most likely you're gonna get it. So I remember distinctly, my sister praised a necklace of a Saudi lady one day in a masjid, and didn't know each other. But that lady insisted on giving my sister that necklace. My sister kept saying, "No, no, I didn't mean that. I don't want it." But she ended up walking home with that necklace around her neck. So hospitality, generosity, gift giving, taking things to people's houses, and all of that kind of generous culture. Also, I've noticed a lot of dignity in Saudi ladies that I've interacted with. They have this dignified aura about them where they don't lower themselves. They have self-respect. So, for example, if you don't want to share some things with them, they're not going to try. They're not going to keep asking, "Oh, please tell me," and beg for that information, or they're not going to interfere in your affairs. So when you are sharing things with them, when you're going to them, they're welcoming you. And when you don't want to do that, they don't impose themselves. So generally, this is what I noticed. And again, I will keep saying it repeatedly again and again that even though those are norms, every person is an individual. Every person is an individual. So every person is different. But generally, I've noticed that they've got a lot of self-respect. They wouldn't humiliate themselves unnecessarily. They wouldn't unnecessarily lower themselves. And they also have the culture of strong boundaries. I've invited a Saudi friend over to my house, and her son was playing with my sons. And upstairs, we had a kids' playing area, right? One room I've dedicated to kids' playing room. So I was inviting her to go upstairs with me, but she was very hesitant. And the reason was that she thought that upstairs would be bedrooms, and she thought the bedrooms had their privacy. So she was not going upstairs because it was a strong sense of privacy that I don't want to see your bedrooms. I don't want to intervene in your privacy. And bedroom is something sacred in that culture. From what I've seen personally, experienced, is that nobody is invited in the bedroom. In fact, one day I invited my Saudi friend over, and for me, coming from a Pakistani background, I invite you in all of my house. I invite you in my bedrooms, everywhere. I don't have any problems with that. However, because I hosted her in my bedroom, she felt so uncomfortable that the next time I invited her to my house, she wouldn't come. She just kept telling me to let's go meet outside somewhere. And so that kind of thing, bedroom is a private thing, is something that only spouses are allowed into. Sometimes not even the in-laws are allowed into. And they have this culture of bride going to the hotel first. When they get married, straight from the ceremony, they have the separate family system, right? So they don't go to the house that's prepared for the bride. They go to a hotel room and they live there for like first 3 nights, and then they might go to the honeymoon or they might come back to their bridal house. And this is just something I've noticed in their culture that happens. And then obviously they have separate accommodation, segregation, and having maid is a norm in their culture. Having maid in middle class Saudi families is a norm. Everybody in their house has maid to help them. So having a maid helps you with being so hospitable, with being so inviting, with being so generous. So having guests over is not a problem at all. Any day, any time, your house is always clean, and you're able to serve food whenever, right? So that's why some of the things that they have is because generally they are well off. They can afford these kind of things and this kind of luxury. So these are the norms that I've observed in a Saudi culture. Now, let's go to Indo-Pak culture. Now, this is the second culture that I've experienced firsthand. And generally, they have combined family system. Generally, mother-in-law is considered an authority, and the daughter-in-law would generally call her amiji or a similar term that would indicate motherhood. Now, a lot of things come with this package, with having a combined family system and having a mother-in-law who's seen as authority. Now, I've also noticed that in Indo-Pak culture, there is a strong possessive attachment of mothers with their sons, and sometimes even sons with their mothers as well. So they've got this possessive attachment where initially mother would be so attached, even after marriage, she would be super attached and she would want her son to spend a lot of time with her. And I've heard of instances where if the spouses have planned a trip together, then mother-in-law would sometimes want to go on that trip as well with them, with the newlywed couple, because of this attachment. And in the old age, or when the parents are a bit older, they sometimes feel like they can't do anything with their children. So they are so used to having the children around and depending on their children. So basically, very interdependent relationship between a son and the parents. But also, I've noticed that they have very strong values, very strong family traditions. And one of those things is that they grow up learning that parents are first. Parents come first, and their siblings are very important, which is a very good thing. It's an Islamic thing as well that parents have an immense right over you, and your siblings also have very crucial place in your life. They're your blood relatives, and it is very good. However, sometimes that could start meaning that the wife is less important and that the wife is always going to be second. If the parents are always first, so even if they're wrong, sometimes the wife would just have to deal with it. So this kind of things can happen. But this is the poll that I want to send to you now. It's going to come to you, and it is called The Nature of Relationship with Wife. So is wife a permanent relationship or a temporary one? It's completely anonymous. I will just see what most of you think. All right. So most of you have answered that the wife is a permanent relationship. I'm curious, why do you think that? Why do you think that the wife is a permanent relationship? Many of you also said that it's a temporary relationship. One sister is saying it's a perfect description of Indo-Pak culture. Well, it depends on the person. If he wants to take this relationship to Jannah. Okay, barakallahu fiki, that is a good answer. All right. So the thing is, if we divide a relationship in two categories, one is blood relationships, your parents, you can never cut ties with them, and your siblings, your relatives, you can never cut ties with them. And when you think of the temporary relationships, then you could think of people like your co-workers or people you spend some time with or your friends. So those relationships can be temporary. When you think of why, there is an element of permanence there. Why is there an element of permanence there? Because she is always, always going to be the mother of your children. She's always going to be the mother of your children. And la qaddarallah, la samhallah, even if the divorce happens, her father-in-law is always going to be her mahram. So there is abadiyah there. There is a permanence there. So even though parents are very important and they are forever, it is wrong to think that wife is dispensable. And there is no permanence to that relationship. It is not dispensable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it mithaqan ghalidha. A very mighty covenant. A strong covenant. So it is not to be taken lightly at all. Some other elements of Indian and Pakistani culture is that they've got loose boundaries. And it also comes from being in a combined family system. It's not easy to maintain that strong of boundaries when you're living with some people. So loose boundaries and also privacy issues where they don't have that strong sense of respecting other people's privacy because they think that it's in conflict with being a one family unit. That being one family unit, we share everything. Sometimes they could take wife's things. For example, if the daughter-in-law has gotten gifts from her family, like some plates and some spoons and things like that for her house, sometimes the in-laws could take that and say, okay, the guests are coming, so we need to use that. So the wife's approval is not considered necessary sometimes in that situation. Things like that, loose boundaries, privacy issues. And then we also notice in this culture that sometimes the sons are very pampered. Again, I keep saying this again, and I will keep saying it for the rest of the session because I don't want to offend anybody. I would keep saying that everybody is an individual and every family is different and unique. However, these are some of the trends that, or some of the norms I've noticed, that sons are very pampered, and so they love being taken care of. And even after their marriage, and if they're living in a combined family system, there's no requirement for them to step up or be different in any way. So they keep living the way they are, and now all the expectation of that pampering lies on the wife. Basically, the wife is expected to mother them now. And that results into a lot of expectations. And so the expectations of a husband from his wife are there anyway, but because of the nature of combined family system, the in-laws also have a lot of expectations from her. And I've seen that Indo-Pak culture, they are also very hospitable. And they like to invite guests over, or they like to serve guests with whatever they have, and their housewives would pride themselves on being so guest ready, prepared. They would prepare things in advance, keep it in the freezer, so to make it easy to serve the guests and things like that. And they're also some of the very helpful people, very hardworking people. And also I've noticed that in the Indo-Pak culture, the primary importance is for the husband's family, and less importance is given to wife's family. So, for example, if the Eids happen or the occasions happen, then everything revolves around the husband's family and their plans rather than wife's family. So, for example, if two of the marriages collide with each other, in wife's family and husband's family, most likely the wife is going to be forced to go to her husband's side event. So these are some of the things that I have generally noticed in the Indian Pak culture. Now let's go to the British culture that I'm now witnessing. Is that I see this culture is obviously very diverse because it's a very international culture. People live here from all around the world, and everybody brings their culture with them. However, when they start living here, they start adopting some of the things from the British culture, and you start noticing some similar trends in the families living in British culture. So, one of the things is the nuclear family, where a separate family system, but also not a lot of emphasis on meeting, or not a lot of effort put into combining families together. Obviously, not everybody is the same, and every family has their own traditions. However, it could happen that the family starts getting very nuclear, a little bit isolated, and that some things that have come from the non-Muslim culture is that wife is central, so she is given the most importance. You know that in non-Muslim culture, they think that wife is number one for the husband, and husband is number one for the wife. But in Islamic culture, we do say that for a son, parents is number one. But however, the son is required to meet all of his wife's needs. So financially speaking, a wife have more rights. However, this is not the debate. So what I've noticed here in the Muslim families, they give a lot of importance to the wife. And also I've noticed the sensitivity and the understanding of the needs of newly married couples, and of the celebration of romance. And even in Muslim couples, a sister living here, she comes from a Pakistani culture. And before this session, I was speaking to her, and she was telling me her thoughts on why she wants to keep her son in a separate accommodation, nearby, but separate. So she came from Indo-Pak culture, but because she was living here for a long time, her ideas kind of modified a little bit. So she said that I want my son to live separately. I don't want him to live with me initially because of hijab issues. But also, she said something very insightful. She said, you know, Umar, when couples first get married, sometimes they decorate the whole house, they put candles everywhere, and they create a romantic mood, not just in the bedroom, but in the whole house. And they could have their intimate moments everywhere, not just restricted to one room. So that adds to the spice and to the spark, to the connection, to the bondage that initially is very important to bring the couples together. And then they start forming an understanding. And then the man starts stepping up and being a responsible man. So that's why she said she wants initially to keep her son separate. For the first 4 or 5 years, I'm not going to expect anything from them. My all expectations are from my son, nothing from the wife, all from the son. If she likes to spend time with us, I will be so happy. But if she doesn't, I'll just give her space and I'll be there for her and things like that. So these are the thoughts of a Pakistani lady living in a British culture. So the sensitivity and understanding of the needs of the newly married couple is something that I found remarkable over here. And then I've noticed that this culture is centered around health. It is centered around health. Even the elderly are very independent. You would see that in the morning, even if it's cold, no matter what the weather, around the park or inside the park, you would find people running. Those people can be young people and they can be old people. Find them running and walking and jogging. And in the summer, you can find them running everywhere. My husband, Allah Mubarak, I really love this habit. He used to run to his work and back. He would come home and he'd be like all sweaty and stuff. So the culture is centered around healthy eating and some good, healthy exercising habits. That means that the elderly are independent. They don't need their children that much because even in their old age, they are very healthy and they're doing everything by themselves and they are able to do everything by themselves. And one of their aims is that, oh, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to run around with my grandkids. So that is a positive. And I've seen that they have very strong boundaries, obviously, and that automatically starts coming when there's a separate family system. Boundaries automatically start getting in place and some privacy automatically starts happening. However, I've noticed that there's a limited influence of mother-in-law or her role could get somewhat diminished. And that is not a very good thing because obviously we want our elderly to be very involved with our family because of the barakah, or because of their experience and their knowledge. So we want to benefit from that. We don't want to diminish their role. Strong boundaries is good. Privacy is good. However, it could get very isolating and limiting that way. Right. So those are 3 cultures. Now, let's go to the benefits and challenges of a combined family system. Now, before we get into it, let's have another poll real quick. Ladies, what aspects of your relationship with in-laws is most challenging? Again, this is anonymous, so you can feel free to be honest with it. Barakallahu fikum. I'm going to end the poll. And most of you have said that interference in personal matters. Yeah, so that is a boundary issue. And unrealistic expectation and communication. Right. So let's get into it. Let's compare. Is there any benefit from living with in-laws or living separately? Let's just talk about them differently. So the benefits and challenges of a combined family system. First of all, let's go to the benefits. Financial help. If you're not that well off, having your wife live with your family is very practical because you don't have to spend extra on food or on bills. You might contribute some, but it's going to be significantly less than rent and everything that comes with a separate housing. And when you're living in a combined family system, you can get help in sickness if somebody is sick. Other people can step in and be there for the kids, for example, be there for the husband, or even for the wife if she's sick. She might be not able to cook, so she might have help in that way. I've been in that situation where I was sick and I had nobody at all. So help with children, because it takes a village to raise children. So any help you can get around that is amazing, that you don't get in a separate family system. So generally, more cooperation, more collaboration, more connectivity. Everybody feels connected to each other. They get to see each other. And that is a big positive. If you see everybody regularly, then you're going to feel more connected to them. Also, you can get help with homeschooling. Different people can teach different things to your child. And it's very helpful, especially if you're living in a non-Muslim country, that it becomes even more of a a positive. Now, the negatives of a combined family system is obviously privacy. Privacy gets compromised, and privacy is dignity. If you got no privacy, everybody knows your affairs. Then you feel like you're naked in front of people. You're not dignified. So privacy is a big thing. And honestly, ladies, if there are any mother-in-laws in here or daughters-in-law, any challenges you see or any negatives you see, it can be turned into a positive by being aware of not doing these things. So in a combined family system, it is going to be a big plus if you have a strong sense of boundary and you don't interfere in each other's life. That's going to make living in a combined family system significantly easier and nicer experience for everybody involved. So privacy, know your rights, and know your boundaries. And the challenges are obviously interference, distance between spouses, so they don't have that initial time to connect with each other that they desperately need. It could be like 6 months to a year that they need an exclusive time with no expectation from wife or daughter-in-law whatsoever. They have to have this exclusive time together where they can connect and navigate life's challenges together. And also, even after the birth of the child, how to raise their children, there shouldn't be interference. It is a responsibility on the parent's shoulder to raise their children. It's not the responsibility on the grandparents' shoulder. No, not at all. The grandparents are not going to be asked. Yes, they can offer their advice, they can offer their experiences, their expertise, they can offer their help and all of that, but in a non-intrusive way. They have to respect the boundaries and they have to back off if they feel any resistance. And if they know that their role is to maintain that kind of distance, that kind of boundary, then it makes living with the combined family system much more pleasant. And also, a very crucial thing is that if you're living with a combined family system, then sometimes men don't have that much of a qawwama. Men don't develop that sense of responsibility or that qawwama. There is an imbalance of power. What is an imbalance of power? Is because even the mother-in-law, she has the backing of her family, her children, and her husband. And the husband obviously has the power, obviously, because he's the husband. So the party without any power, it becomes the wife. So she's the weaker element. So it's easy to oppress her. And that's why Prophet ﷺ said before passing, fear Allah in the matters of women, that they're like prisoners with you. So they are in a weak position. So it needs to be extra care that you don't overstep your boundaries without knowing. Also, in combined family system, expectations develop automatically. And one of the biggest negatives that I see is that wife is unable to host her friends or parents for days, for example. She wants to have her mother live in for many days. It gets harder if in the same house there is father-in-law and mother-in-law and the brothers-in-law. It gets harder. So the wife's mother is not going to be able to stay with her for an extended time. Like she can come for a short visit and they have to go back and things like that. And also with the invitation of friends over. I know of people that live with combined family system that are unable to invite their friends or host their friends or family members because it doesn't match with the family schedule or whatever. So there are limitations like that and limits the expression of your femininity or intimacy. And these things matter more in the beginning of the relationship. So, for example, you can't be too feminine with your husband if you have company, right? So if the expression of femininity and intimacy is limited to one room, and that means that outside that room, a lot of interaction goes without you being able to express any of your femininity or naughty words and things like that. And only the 20% of time that you spend in the bedroom is where you're able to actually tease and express your femininity. So that in itself is not very satisfying. And also, we know that in combined family system, there are some hijab issues. If the brothers-in-law are living there and they are mature age, then there are going to be a lot of hijab issues. So it is a good idea if you're living in a combined family system that at a time there should be only one son living with the parents. And the other sons, if they're married, or even if they're not married, then because of the hijab issues, if it's possible, it's best that the hamu should not live together, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-hamu wal-maut," is you have to be extra careful with your hijab in front of your brothers-in-law. So this needs to be taken into consideration. All right. So this is the positives and negatives of the combined family system. Now let's go to the benefits and challenges of a separate family system. Now the benefits is that you get more independence, obviously. You're more independent to make your own decisions and do whatever you please in your own house. There's going to be more of a communication and connection between spouses because they have to collaborate together to navigate the issues that arise. And this communication and this collaboration in privacy and in difficult moments is what's going to bring them closer together, give them a very good bond together. Obviously, they have their privacy, and men are more responsible because they have to take responsibility. Now they're qawwam. They have the responsibility of household on their shoulders. They have to meet their needs. And wife can host whoever she likes for as many days as she likes. And then the challenges of a separate family system is obviously there is less help with children, less help in sickness and homeschooling. And then one very basic thing is not everyone can afford it. Now, ladies, even if not everyone can afford a separate living system, what can be done, the thing is, even if the separate accommodation is just like a tiny place with the basic necessities of life, it is still a very good thing to have your independence. Because when we see the Prophet ﷺ's life, we see that how each of his wives had their own private room, right? So each of them had their own private rooms. Even if they're not luxury rooms with so much necessities, a basic house is even better than giving up your privacy completely. And I'm not calling everybody to start living separately because, as I said before, all families are different. They have their unique needs. So if the parents, for example, need the son and the son is the only son or the oldest son or the youngest son, so and the parents are living with him, then that's a separate thing. Then that's perfectly acceptable. But if everybody's living together with all the brothers and all the sisters and everything like that, then it become a little bit more challenging. In that case, it's best not to agree to that kind of marriage. You have to stand up your grounds and say that I do need my own private accommodation, even if it's like small and basic. All right. One of the negatives of a separate family system is that parents and family members can sometimes get neglected because you don't see them every day. You might forget to call them and they get neglected, and that's not acceptable. And also, it can sometimes make you feel lonely and isolated. So loneliness and isolation can happen, which in turn can lead to some sort of depression if you don't feel that you got caring and loving people around you. So those are all the negatives and the positives of combined family system versus separate family system. Now we are going to go to the key ingredients for a loving relationship with in-laws. Those are my takeaways or my gems that I've learned. But before we go into that, who has the most significant role in keeping the relationship between the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law, or the daughter-in-law and the in-laws, pleasant? Who has the most significant role? Okay. I've got answers. So if you're saying husband, right. Okay. Husband, husband, husband. So far, I've gotten husband and, of course, husband, both husband and wife, the daughter-in-law and husband. Right. Okay. So I would have to agree with the husband that the role of the husband is the most crucial one. If the husband is a real man, is not a mama's boy, if the husband is qawwam, then he is going to shield his wife from all the injustice that could happen to her, because she is given to the husband with a mithaq al-ghalidha, with a very strong covenant. And she is his responsibility to make sure that she's not oppressed, that she's taken care of. On the other hand, you know why most problems happen between mother-in-laws and daughters-in-law? It is because they're both emotional beings. They've got emotional attachment. So it doesn't happen the same way with men. So generally, the father-in-laws are fine. They don't create many problems unless the mother-in-law keeps pushing him towards getting involved. Otherwise, generally what I've seen is that fathers-in-law are fine. They're generally harmless. But then the daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law get a conflict between them because of this emotional element, this emotional attachment. Now, it is the husband's role, it is his intelligence that he gives them both clear boundaries. He gives them both their due rights and fulfills them both in a way that none of them is feeling neglected. None of them is feeling like the other one is given preference on her expense. So it shouldn't be like that. If a husband knows how to balance or how to play his role well, how to be a real man, how to be a qawwam, then generally all of these things can be avoided. I've seen it work where the conflicts happened and it doesn't work with both families and the husband steps in and then everybody knows their place and then everybody basically knows their boundaries. Ladies, my admin is going to send you the link to raise responsible sons who are inshallah going to become good husbands. And it is very important for ladies to choose the right husband who is not the mama's boy. And for that also, inshallah, my admin is going to send you some links in the chat here that you can click. So it is crucial to find the right husband. And for that, inshallah, we also have a guide. We have a session on YouTube. And also we have created the journal so that those who are looking to get married can take guidance from that journal, inshallah, find the right husband who is going to be the qawwam, inshallah, and who is going to be able to play his role well. All right, the husband's role is most important, but everybody needs to play the role well. So for the wife's role is to be strong as well, not to be a victim. Every time the husband comes home, she's crying, oh no, look what he did. No, she has to be proactive. My admin is going to send you the link for how to raise strong and feminine daughters. So the role of the wife is to have some strength, is to be stronger and not to be in the victim role all the time. Because the husband might empathize once or twice and then he starts getting tired of that. So she needs to know how to create her own boundaries as well. And at the same time, a smart wife will help her husband connect to his family. Because a husband who is not connected to his family is not going to be a fulfilled husband. So a smart wife facilitates that. So then the return for her is so much better. The husband is so much better for her. So the role of the wife is to have a lot of wisdom, inshallah. And a mother-in-law plays a very crucial role as well. In the event that the husband is not a proper qawwam, he's not able to maintain the balance, then either the wife or the mother-in-law, if they're smart enough, they can still contain a lot of problems. So for the wife to be smart is like I said, not to be in the victim role all the time, and to help the husband connect with his family and facilitate that. And then the role of the mother-in-law is to give them space, is to not interfere, not overstep her boundaries. And the role of the mother-in-law is that in the beginning of the marriage, for the first few years, let them connect with each other. I know a lady who initially started living in a combined family system, and then later on, she came to Saudi Arabia and she started living separately. However, she said that initially, when she got married, the mother-in-law was super attached with her son. So every time he would come from work, she would tell him, oh, come have rest in my room. So the son would have rest in the afternoon in her room, and then even at night, when the kids were crying or whatever, she'd be like, let's move you to a separate room. Now, these are the moments the husband and wife can actually connect together. But then she said that initially I was robbed of it. So the son was well taken care of, and we were not given the time to connect to each other. If we were sitting and talking or anything, then she would call me to do some chores and things like that. So they were not able to have that bond. When she came to Saudi Arabia, she lived separately with her husband for years and years. Even after so many years, her kids are grown older now, but she still says that she has no idea how to talk to her husband with. She has no bond, no connection with her husband. They have nothing to talk about. Because the time to form that bond was in the beginning of the relationship, and that was destroyed. So she says that I have no idea like how to be with my husband. So this kind of thing should not happen. A smart mother-in-law would allow and facilitate for this bond to happen, for this connection to happen, so that the son-in-law and the daughter-in-law are both fulfilled and happy. Now, finally, the role of the mothers. The role of the mothers is very important. What does that mean? In our society, sometimes the daughters are taught or educated on how to be with her in-laws, but very rarely the sons are educated in this matter. They don't know how to create this balance. They are not educated or informed on how to fulfill the right of each person, give them their due place and their due value them each separately. They're often not taught to create this balance, and they're often not taught to how to create boundaries. So the role of mothers is more crucial than anything right now. And I want to call on to mothers today that please work on your sons as well. Just as hard as you work on your daughters, work on your sons as well. Teach them the ingredients to be a successful husband, to be a just husband. Because if he's not able to be just like that, he might be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't want that. We want the best for our children. We want them to be happy and fulfill with each other, so that their children are happy and fulfilled, inshallah. All right, let's go 20 lessons that I've learned from observing all the cultures and all the family systems, inshallah. So when it comes to in-laws, generally, each spouse is responsible for their own family. If the mother-in-law is stepping her boundaries in each side, for example, if the daughter's mother is interfering in her marriage, she's telling her to do this or say this or handle this thing like that, it is her responsibility to limit her mother, right? So if, for example, she's saying that your husband should be doing this and that, and she's not doing that for you, it is the daughter's responsibility to limit that, to say that we're going to work it out between us. We don't need any outside influence or interference. And similarly, if husband's mother is the one overstepping her boundaries, it is husband's responsibility to put boundaries, to tell her, no, this is a private matter. So generally, each spouse is responsible for their family. And it is important, therefore, to have these discussions in the marriage meeting prior to marriage, before marriage. Is important to figure out if the son is going to be able to be a qawwam, be a man, or is he very suppressed. There are some telltale signs if the son is very suppressed. Sometimes what happens is that the mother has this personality where she is answering every question for the son, for example. So when you're having this marriage meetings, you need to observe the family dynamics. So if the question is asked from a son, is the father or mother are the ones talking? Now, sometimes it could be because the son is shy, and that's fine. However, the decisions need to be made from the son himself. The son needs to seem proactive, seem to be involved in decision making. Let me tell you a scenario. What happened is, I've seen this behavior from a father. They came to us for their son's proposal. So while talking, with every tiny detail, the father would ask the son, this is my opinion. What do you say, son? Or he would say, okay, let's fix this date. What do you say, son? And then one time we asked a gender question. So the father was responding from the son's point of view. So he's saying, okay, no, my son is like that, and he does this and he does that. And he addressed his son on spot, and he said, son, if you find something that I'm saying is not accurate, please feel free to step in and set the record straight. So this kind of respectful interaction from the father with his son, it tells you that the son is the decision maker, going to be able to make hard decisions. It's important to notice those family dynamics. See how they're interacting and who's making the decisions, right? Newlyweds should make a plan to deal with each other's family in the first few months of the marriage. They've started intermingling with each other's family, they've noticed things, and now they can now make a personalized plan how to deal with each other's family, how to behave with each other's family. For example, my father never likes to hear no, or never likes to hear any counter argument. So if he says anything, you need to be silenced, right? So that's fine. That's forming a plan. And the wife could say, okay, my mother is difficult and she likes to talk a lot about this or that issue, but it's okay. I mean, we're not going to let her dictate what to do. Obviously, I'm going to listen to you as my husband. I'm going to be listening to you. But we've tried a lot with my mother to change her ways, but it doesn't work. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to be silent in front of her, but we are obviously going to do what you say. So this kind of plan needs to happen in the beginning of the relationship. Now, as we said, the role of the husband is crucial. Sometimes, because of the nature of the relationship or the personality of the mother, it is not possible to stop the injustice, to stop her from saying horrible things to the wife, to the bride, or overstepping her boundaries. In that case, the role of the husband becomes even more crucial. If he's not able to afford separate accommodation, the least he can do is to offer lots of sympathy and validation. He needs to be grateful. You say, okay, I know that my mother is not easy to live with. And I know she's making things very hard for you. And I admire how you've been handling it. I know it's really hard. And I'm grateful that you're doing this for me. So this kind of sympathy and validation is sometimes all the wife needs. Even if no injustice stopped. But the wife feeling that my husband is with me, or he sympathizes with me, or he knows what I'm going through, sometimes it takes away all the pain. So a husband needs to be very aware of that, very aware of what he can do. All right. Balance of healthy give and take. Now, for a husband, it's very important not to force wife to do things for his family. For example, the wife doesn't want to teach her younger brother-in-law. Now, I mean, she's not responsible. If she does, it's good. And husband is going to be grateful. Everybody's going to be grateful. But don't force her. Don't force things on her that she is not obliged to do. Because you can force her today, but then it leads to resentments. It leads to bad feelings in the heart that are going to be detrimental long term. Why would your wife want to keep willingly in touch with your family if you're forcing her to do it? So a smart husband would encourage the wife without forcing. Would encourage the wife without forcing. And when she does it, a smart husband would appreciate that. And to acknowledge that it's something additional that she's doing. It's a ihsan that she's doing. Many times the problems happen when the husband and the in-law start taking whatever wife is doing for granted. Okay, this is her job. And if she doesn't do it, then she's a bad person. No. If you start taking the things she does for granted, then that's when the imbalance happens with the give and take. And that's when the wives don't want to do anything with the husband's family if they have any choice. So we don't want that. We want the hearts to be together. We want the love to be there. So we're going to be smart about it. All right. Number 5, having your own kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom is a must. Now, I know every family is different and the affordability of different for every family, but if you can have your own kitchen, your own bathroom and bedroom, then a lot of problems can be avoided. One of the sisters said that her family had combined family system. So she said, as soon as the kitchen got separated, the tension is completely reduced. Why the kitchen separated? Because every woman likes to feel in charge of her kitchen and likes to do things her way. For example, she wants to make breakfast whenever, she wants to do things like that for whenever. Every wife wants that. And sometimes when the daughter-in-law tries to do things, it could feel like changing mother-in-law's ways. So there can be some resistance there because, as we know, that elderly people are set in their way. So they want to do things in a particular way. And if the wife doesn't want to do that the same way, a lot of conflict can happen. But the wife should feel in charge of her own kitchen because she needs to take care of her family and her kids. So own kitchen is a must. And then own bathroom, obviously, because nobody needs to know when you go to the bathroom. And the bedroom is a must. So if these 3 things are provided, also a separate entrance is a very good idea. It gives an additional privacy. So then if these things are provided, then even the combined family system can work wonderfully. Right. Then also special care for the most beautiful months of daughter-in-law's life. because she will never forget those. I know a sister who initially lived with her in-laws, and then she started living separately with her husband. And the mother-in-law was of the type who was like very, very attached to the son. So she would want to be involved in everything, and then she would directly tell the daughter, subhanAllah, how to dress and things like that. And the daughter-in-law ended up hating her time in the combined family system, even though she initially agreed. She agreed to live because the husband was able to provide separate accommodation. But the husband was pleading with her, let's live in a combined family system for some time, and then I'll promise I will give you a separate accommodation. So she agreed. She's like, okay, fine. And she lived there for the first few months. But the memories she created there, she has the bitter taste from that. Even now, like it's been years. And now she's in a separate family system. And she says, my husband is the best husband ever. And I'm so happy in the way I'm living and everything. But I can never forget those months that I've spent in a combined family system. So she wishes she never had to go through that. Because those are special moments. The thing is, before the kids are born, husband and wife have a very special time together where they can do things they can never do again after having kids, right? Not never, but it became very challenging to do the similar things after having kids. So now they do need some time and lots of privacy. Afterwards, they wouldn't care for privacy. They would like come and spend time with their kids and things like that. But initially, they want those moments together. And if anything interferes with that, then the wife, because she is more emotional, she's going to remember that for the rest of her life. So we need to be careful of that. Also, when the proposal first comes, you need to be aware that if the mother-in-law or the daughter-in-law, either of them has OCD elements in them, then that's an added difficulty in the relationship, a potential for more conflicts. Because people with OCD can find small things a very big deal. And they want to do things in a particular way. So this can be more challenging with a combined family system. If there's a separate family system, then this can be managed. All right. Number 8, know that your husband is very comfortable with the negatives of his family. He's lived there all his life. So he doesn't sometimes realize your challenges or what you're going through because he grew up with them. So you need to be smarter with your communication. You need to be able to tell him why this thing is bothersome. It might be a complete shock to your husband because he's so used to it. He doesn't even get it. Like, why is it bothersome? So you need to find better ways of communication. Now, one of the sisters told me that her husband grew up very pampered. She didn't realize early, but then she started living separately with her husband, they would go in a grocery mall, do the shopping, and the wife would be the one carrying all the bags to the car and putting the cart in its place, and the husband would just be walking, not doing anything. And it would bother the wife so much. Why is he not offering to help? Why is he not? And then later on, when she communicated with her husband, it turns out he didn't even realize it. He didn't even realize that he should be offering help. So he's like, oh, you should have told me. It was that simple. She thought to herself, like, why should I be telling him that? Isn't this common sense? Shouldn't he know? So there are things that you might think is common sense and that everybody should know or he would know, and then you're having this resentment in your heart that why is he not doing things this way or why is he not understanding and things like that. Then you need to realize that, okay, maybe he doesn't even realize. I have to convey it in a different way. All right. And number 9 is husband needs time alone with parents and siblings too. Now, I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to start picking up the speed, inshallah. Husband needs time alone with his parents and siblings too. So don't always be there with him whenever he's going to visit his parent, especially like in a combined family system. Give him that time to spend time with his siblings and parents alone as well, because they miss that time with their brother, miss that time with their son. Okay, husband should be aware and involved in his family matters. And that wife shouldn't interfere, especially if you're living in a separate family system. Then it shouldn't be that the husband doesn't know what his parents are going through. For example, if they're going through financial difficulty or any health issue or any trouble with like pick and drop, anything like that, husband should be completely involved with his family's affairs. And the wife shouldn't interfere. And she shouldn't ask or pry her husband for information. Okay, what's your family doing now? Or what are they planning to do? Vacation or things like that. It's okay if it's to plan something, but it shouldn't be just for knowledge and interference. So wife should keep her distance. It is not a wife's job to correct her in-laws. It is in her best interest to never engage in a direct conflict with the mother-in-law. If she sees that the mother-in-law is upset about something, she should be quiet, silent. She didn't try to correct her or set the record straight or anything like that. Later, she can approach her through her husband. Maybe the husband is able to convey it in a much better way to his own mother. It's not the wife's job to correct the things she sees with her in-law. So, okay, you are doing this wrong. Or this shouldn't be done like that. Or this shouldn't be done like that. No. If something is really bothersome, she can bring it to her husband's notice. And it's up to him to bring it up with his siblings or his parents and without mentioning the wife. Shouldn't say, oh, my wife said this. No, never. That is going to cause problems. All right. Mother-in-law should have her own projects, things to occupy her time after her son's marriage. And ideally, it's a very good idea to take good care of your health and then to involve yourself in your own projects just so you don't really have time to interfere or think about your son that much. If mothers-in-law have their own full life and their happy life, then they tend to be happier mothers-in-law and easygoing mothers-in-law. Boundaries should be made clear. Boundaries of relationships, nature of relationship, what kind of things are acceptable for both wife and the mother-in-law, and also should be made clear around parenting. So what are the topics? What are the things that we are going to take stand on? For example, parents want to homeschool their children, and the mother-in-law or father-in-law think, okay, schooling is much better. Here, boundaries need to be established. And also, number 14, everybody should realize that privacy is dignity, whether it's for husband or for the wife. So if you're relaying everything your husband does or says, then you're exposing your husband. And the same thing is with wife. So especially with combined family system, if the wife has no privacy, more often she has no dignity because nobody respects her. People know things that are going to happen, things that have already happened. So maintaining privacy is maintaining your dignity. And the wife should maintain her husband's dignity, especially with her family, with her circle. And the husband should do the same for his wife. No public displays of affection, because at the end of the day, jealousy is a fact. It could happen. So the public displays of affection, the gifts, for example, and the calling endearing names, showing extra affection, being extra physically affectionate, loving and hugging and all of that, it should be private because jealousy is a fact. Even though some families, they would pretend it's very normal, the husband should hug the wife in front of them or everything like that. But then even in those families, sometimes I've seen it myself that sometimes the mother-in-law or the sisters-in-law could feel a little bit, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but they would feel like, why is he not like that with us? So keep those affairs private, behind closed doors. Nobody needs to know how much you love each other. And the gifts is not just for the wife, it's also for the mother-in-law. The thing is, if you're living in a combined family system and the husband is only bringing gift for a mother or only bringing gift for the wife, it is going to cause problems. So husband needs to be very smart in that way. And the wife needs to be very smart as well. Keep your affairs private, especially your love. Keep your love private so you don't get any evil eye. We know in Islam that evil eye is present, so we need to be careful. Okay. Now, seek advice of your in-laws, but don't undersell yourself. So don't seek advice in a way, oh, I don't know anything. How do we do this? If you're asking about every single thing in teeny tiny details, then they're going to start thinking, okay, you don't know anything. Sometimes they could start feeling like you're ignorant. So don't undersell yourself. Maintain your dignity. Seek their advice, but also use your own brain and do what you feel is best. So seeking their advice is a good idea to keep them involved, but maintain your dignity. Don't undersell yourself. Now, this is the last page, inshallah, and then we're going to learn some du'as. Your relationship with your in-laws should neither be too close nor too distant. This is the best way to keep the love alive, to keep the affection alive between your in-laws. So neither too close nor too distant. You have to be helpful and kind, like sort of professional relationship, don't get too emotionally attached with them. At the end of the day, the nature of this relationship is that jealousy and these things happen. If you are involved with them emotionally, that means that if any conflict happens, it's going to affect both sides even more drastically. Let the small things slide so you can take stand on bigger things. If you are taking a stand on every small thing, that means that the bigger things that you really want to take stand on lose their value. They're like, ah, she has a problem with everything, right? So the small words, the small phrases, let them slide. And in case of a misunderstanding, always tell your husband your side. So if a misunderstanding happened and you know that your in-laws are going to tell that to your husband, you need to tell him your side as well so that he has the full picture. And when you are telling your side, sister, it is very important to not badmouth your in-laws. Do not badmouth them at all. Just state facts. Okay, this is what happened. I came in. I didn't see her extending her hands in greeting, so I just went in that room. Don't tell him, no, she's always assuming things about me. Oh, she's so sensitive, things like that. No, never. Just state facts, your perspective, no assumptions. No assuming anything bad about her. Like, this is what happened. This is the best way to communicate where your husband wouldn't feel like you are trying to separate him or attack his family or cause a drift between them. You have to be very sensitive. You have to be very wise because if you say anything negative about his family, he might misunderstand you and think, okay, I need to be very careful with my wife. She's going to separate me from my family. You need to have a date with your husband weekly where you communicate, where you talk about difficult things and in a pleasant way, difficult things in a pleasant way. And in this meeting, it's a very good idea to talk about anything in-law related or anything about the decision making, hard things, because husband and wife need the connecting time together. It could go something like that. Okay, for this week, have you faced anything challenging that you needed support with? Things like that. So bring up things and talk about it. You're going to feel closer and connected to each other. So the relationship coaches tell you to have regular dates where the aim is to communicate and talk about difficult issues that arise. All right. So those are the 20 things, 20 gems. Now, some du'as. One of the amazing du'a, and a very dear friend has sent me these in the last minute. Allah accept this from her. اللهم لا تسلط علي من لا يخافك في ولا يرحمني. A very good dua, especially with difficult in-laws, or even works for the difficult husband. Oh Allah, do not place over me someone who does not fear you regarding me and does not show me mercy. Allahumma la tusallit alayya. All these dua that I'm going to show you are from the Sunnah, inshallah. Some of them, the wordings have taken from the Quran, and some of them from the Sunnah, but not verbatim. So sometimes they're modified a little, but then you can find bases in the Quran and Sunnah. Ad'iyah li salah zawj, supplications for the righteousness of the husband. You can make this dua, Allahumma aslih li zawji. This is a very general dua. Is, oh Allah, rectify my husband for me. Another dua is, Allahumma ja'alhu hayyinan layyinan sahla. Oh Allah, make him kind, gentle, and easygoing. Allahumma aghfir lahu dhanbahu وأذهب غيظ قلبه وأعذه من مضلات الفتن. Oh Allah, forgive his sins, remove the anger from his heart, and protect him from the trials that lead astray. And Allahumma aghfir lahu dhanbahu وأذهب غيظ قلبه وأعذه من الشيطان الرجيم. The same, oh Allah, forgive his sins, remove the anger from his heart, and protect him from the accursed shaitan. So these are for the husband, and these are for the in-laws. However, there is one more dua that my cousin used to encourage me to make regularly, and it's benefited me immensely. And that is dua for your relationship with your in-laws. So she used to say that always pray, oh Allah, save me from their shar and save them from my shar. Everybody has some evil in them. May Allah protect them from your evil and protect you from their evil. Alhamdulillah, I did this a lot. And alhamdulillah, I see that it is worked wonderfully. Big problems happen, but alhamdulillah, Allah saved us both from each other's shar. So this is a very good dua. Oh Allah, save me from their shar and save them from my shar. All right. These are all the lessons, inshaAllah. And we're going to end our session here. But If you have any questions, then we can quickly take some questions. Barakallahu fikum. And the question can come on YouTube and they can come on Zoom. I'm going to watch them both, inshallah. I see some questions. Okay. The question is, what if daughter-in-law only talks with his brother, not with her bhabhi? And when she visits their home, bhabhi has to meet nicely and serve food. How to deal with it? Husband said it's her matter. We need to do good with her. Right. So what if daughter-in-law only talks with his brother, not with her bhabhi? I'm not sure I understood the question correctly. If somebody can rephrase it for me, that would be very helpful. Jazakumullahu khair, very beneficial. Barakallahu fikum. Can we please get the du'as? Inshallah, I will send the du'as in the group. If you are in the Feminine Wives group, and if you're not, then you can join, inshallah, through these links that the admin has sent. I want to ask if brother or sister only talk with him, not his wife. I think that's a very good idea. Sister-in-law dislikes her bhabhi. Oh, sister-in-law dislikes her bhabhi. Now, it is fine. Disliking is not a problem. The problem is if they start treating each other badly. That is the problem. In that case, we need to establish some boundaries. But if it's just disliking and keeping it to herself, doesn't want to mingle much, that's fine. That's how people are. You're not going to get along with everybody. There's always going to be somebody who has some problem with you, and that is fine. As long as they are not transgressing, they're not committing injustice. As long as they're not doing anything bad to you, that's fine. If they're doing anything bad to you, then you need to establish some boundaries. You have to speak with your husband and establish some boundaries, inshallah. All right. Barakallahu feekum. I think that is it for today. We're going to end this session. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته